This is Saurabh, and you're listening to my favorite talk show, The Weekly Show with Aditya.
This is episode 464 on the 3rd of January 2022. And what a dramatic start to the year 2022 as you read in pseudo media, print, and electronic media that sports athletes are getting the flu left, right, and center. There is not a sport that is spared where the athletes have been exposed to the flu, and this is not for the first time, but every time this happens, we are concerned. Why should we be concerned if a sport athlete falls sick or gets the flu? It just baffles me. So they do. Despite all the talk about fitness, it can happen to anyone. But should we panic? No, it's just a flu. There's no need to panic. What makes it even more amusing is that then they put on pseudo media to gain empathy and sympathy that I got the flu, and as per some naive protocols and some childish protocols, I'm going to isolate myself, or in other words, in real words, I'm going to imprison myself so that every other person is safe. And if there are any close contacts, they should also do the same. Well, this is the biggest joke. I wouldn't tell anyone that. Okay, you got the flu, do it quietly. Why do you need to tell? Yes, you need to tell certain people that, okay, this player is not available due to personal reasons. Why do we need to tell them that they are injured or something has happened? Why does it concern us? No, it doesn't. And therefore, every time this happens, every time a sports athlete, because we don't care about anyone else, we don't care about actors and actresses if they get the flu or if their shooting schedules are disrupted, let it be disrupted. It doesn't make a difference to me or you. Yes, 15 days extra, they will have to spend more, production houses will be under pressure. So what? Why does it matter to me? But that's the way it is, and that's the way 2022, another year in the calendar, another month in the calendar, and the discussion around the imaginary virus, the fictional virus, and all the things surrounding it continues, and the way we behave as children, and the way panic is created as if it's the end of the world every time this discussion happens. But that's what human beings are, and that's not going away. And that's how human beings become more repulsive. But we'll talk about that later. If sports athlete falls sick, let it happen. If they want to imprison themselves for a week, or their close contacts, or whoever is there with them, That's their problem. It's not a concern. Yes, it will affect the match. Well, then the organizers need to come up with better plans that even if you fall sick, it doesn't matter. Let's play. Let's not be concerned about such frivolous and minor things. But let's get to something even more interesting for this morning's episode. Let's discuss the day one pay per view results and why was there a mention about sports athlete getting the flu and then not being part of the match. This is exactly what happened in the much awaited Reigns versus Lesnar WWE Universal Championship match. Roman Reigns had to pull out of the match due to personal reasons and the match was cancelled. But what happened after that was even more interesting. Brock Lesnar was added to an already previous fatal four-way match, thus making it into a fatal five-way match for the WWE World Championship. Rollins versus Lashley versus Owens versus Big E versus Lesnar. And when have we not seen this before? When have I not seen this before? 22 months wait. The last time he lost his championship was in April 2020 against a certain Drew McIntyre who's moved brands and is now happy in being engaged in singles matches and strange kind of feuds. But you had Rollins, you had all of them were former champions, and Lesnar, because he was screwed out of a championship win the last time they had a proper match, and this match was cancelled due to external reason, whatever be the reasons, they quickly had to do something and they added Lesnar. And then what happens? The first thing all these four athletes do is they attack Lesnar. They try to put him out of commission, but it's a fatal five-way. It has no disqualifications, no countouts, which means even if Lesnar is out cold for a while, the other four did not take advantage of that and they continue to form alliances. And what happens? Who does Brock Lesnar pin for this particular match? After Big E takes out Rollins and Lashley and Owens, and by the time he's able to pin anyone else, he performs his signature move on Lesnar. But Lesnar counters it, and with an F5 and couple of suplexes, Lesnar goes on to win his championship match. Now, the interesting thing is that how will others see it? His addition was always going to be some kind of a controversy. It wasn't a controversy. Whenever he's been added, he's gone on to win, be it Money in the Bank, ladder match, nearly winning a Royal Rumble event. And that's the way it went on, which was quite interesting. It was really interesting, nothing surprising about it. And then Roman Reigns might find himself in isolation or something because of obvious reasons for the next 15 days. So he may not be part of a couple of episodes of his regular programming, which means, well, it's interesting. I'm just curious to see how this whole thing plays out. But not for the first time a sports athlete has gone through this phase. I thought that they might cancel the entire event, but it was good on their part not to overdo it and only change the complexion of a match, which did change the complexion and the result. And no one is surprised at Lesnar winning the tournament. Others are good, but Lesnar's addition might have put them off. Otherwise, everyone was looking at Bobby Lashley to go and win the tournament. And that's how he wins. It doesn't matter whether it was the WWE World Championship or WWE Universal Championship, you have a title in your hands. And then the other singles title, Morgan versus Becky Lynch, it was as it was expected to be. Despite all the efforts put by Morgan, Becky Lynch used her experience of being in this particular brand and business for over 7 years, and she used every trick in the book to escape pinfall after pinfall or making sure that her opponent did not attempt any severe move which would get her to pin her 1, 2, 3, and that is exactly what happened. Whether it was via pinfall, it was, of course, her much touted, newly developed pinfall attempt which worked, which means that her opponent has some time to recover, and it will be very interesting as to who the next opponent will be. Let's move from here to the championship matches, that the tag team championship matches. Four very good teams, but I think the only championship that was always going to change hands was going to be the singles competition, men's singles competition. Every other championship match was retained, which means the Usos continued to reign along with their cousin Roman Reigns as far as a SmackDown tag team division is concerned. And despite efforts by the New Day, I don't know how long will this New Day thing last, because they will want to go on their individual journeys. And how long will this whole Sir Kofi Kingston and King Wood story last? The faction might go away. It is a possibility. That's the way things are, but you never know. And then in the Raw Tag Team Championship, Street Profits did everything to win. But as I said, the RK Bro, you may call it a strange alliance. I call it a mentor mentee kind of alliance, or whatever be the terminology that is being used in the present contemporary times. But I think it was interesting. So both the tag team championship matches retained, which is not surprising because that's the way these things often work out. And there you go. Just one championship match changing hands and all others being retained. And then there were the two non-title matches, Edge versus The Miz. Edge is now happy with going ahead in non-title feud matches. What was the feud? Feud was based on ego and a certain individual's Hall of Fame career, involvement of their former partners who were wrestlers, their wives. So when Mrs. Wife tried to interfere in the match and tried to do something when the referee wasn't noticing, and I was not surprised when it happened. When Edge's own wife came out into the arena, it evened the odds. And it's not surprising, it was always going to happen. Of course, you had the whole power couple situation. How do people have such terms? Power couples is for all to say. It's like saying that, well, I won't name names. In the Indian cricket team, you have most of the athletes are married, but the power couple is associated with one particular athlete and his wife because of the relative dominance in their relative professions. Though I don't think that athlete's wife has any kind of dominance as far as the dominance in the acting is concerned, but I won't name them. I'll let the listeners decide who this particular so-called power couple is. I don't agree with such terms because then it sends a message that, okay, only one person is powerful, he has his way. Well, I also have my way. Yes, I have to adhere by rules because that's the way you have calm in society. If there are no rules, you can call it ego or any other term. Yes, you have to follow rules, but that's 5%. 95% of the time, I'm someone who has my way. And when it comes to influence, I'm a bigger influencer and the biggest influencers on pseudo media. Their influence doesn't even come close to the kind of influence I have. But that's the way things are, and if they are given that kind of importance, so be it. And then there was, of course, the Drew McIntyre and the Madcap Moss, another
It's
mentor
10:15.
mentee situation where a certain Madcap Moss is in under the wings of Happy Corbin, King Corbin, whatever you may want to call it. They have their own segment where they try to be humorous, where they try to be cheeky, where they try to mock their opponents or anyone overall, and it works sometimes. It may not work all the time. And then, of course, inexperience may have caused a certain madcap Moss, and then Drew McIntyre, all he needs is one Claymore kick to end the match, and that's exactly what happened. And then, of course, he was attacked after the match, but when has that ever not happened? Planned or unplanned, that happens every time because they want to carry on the feud, they want to carry on the rivalry, they want to carry on this thing because they see Drew McIntyre, Sheamus, Baron Corbin maybe as opponents for Roman Reigns. I don't know what do they have in mind, what is their plan. No one knows at this point in time, but I think that's what is going to happen. So after all the drama, after a certain match being cancelled, the athlete being put in another match, and then going on to win that match, when one-on-one and Roman Reigns would have been slightly less tricky, and then who was missing in this entire thing? I think Brock Lesnar, who was dependent on his hype person, Paul Heyman, managed to do everything on his own. The mind games and the way he entered the arena, way he left the arena. But that's how things are. Maybe people change, they have a change of attitude, whatever it is. Overall, it was an interesting pay per view with another pay per view coming soon. But that's all on this side. Let's take a short break. So, this afternoon, that is by the time people listen to this broadcast, you may listen to it in the evening or at this time, but whatever be the case, in just a few hours, the India South Africa second match begins. And of course, everyone says India has a chance against this weakened South African batting because their premier keeper has retired. They have a young keeper coming in who has no experience, and then the win against South Africa may not count because it was a weak team. I think it is a very weak comment by certain egoists who think that how do you decide it's a weak team? Why? Because they haven't made hundreds and fifties and they don't have an average of 51, they have an average of 29. And of course, the Kohli target continues because of his inability to make runs and go beyond and make centuries, get his average to 60, 70, and then of course the KPR target continues. He doesn't make runs, and then of course the coach has to do the defensive job, though everyone will be tired after a while if the coach continues to defend him, if he doesn't make runs, if he continues to make the same mistake. Well, I think I've seen worse mistakes than this made by people which have been glossed over. So I don't think him not making runs, and then this discussion happening every time in a pre-show event by a bunch of, well, I don't even call them experts, rookie anchors who have no idea how to even anchor an event, who themselves probably never even knew what is to taste success, but they knew they would be an anchor because they could do it through means which were not unpopular and unethical means. You go on to become an anchor, you bully the broadcaster to make you an anchor or do something which is untoward, and that's how the current lot of anchors is. And for me, their rating is 0 out of 10 for all the anchors in the sports division, especially in this sport. Other sports I'll let you know later on, but whatever it is. So, yes, who should play, who should not play. I still think this is my team. I would of course go with Mayank and Rahul, and then I would give Pujara a break. Have Iyer at number 3, Kohli at 4, Rahane Pan, Ashwin, Shardul, Siraj, Shami, Bumrah. Of course, speculations about Umesh Yadav playing, but that will be a huge mistake. I will, even if people think Shardul Thakur has nothing to contribute. Should I talk about who had nothing to contribute? The current chairperson of selectors, who shall not be named because that person doesn't deserve to be named. He was like Shardul Thakur. He was in the team bowling at 120 kilometers per hour with hardly any contribution, and yet he was there. And now he goes on to become the chairperson of selectors and the selection committee, whose all over experience is 6-7 matches, and then they comment on people who have played over 60-70 matches. You know how that seems? That seems like a nursery kid is telling me you don't know anything. Okay, yes, they have a right to say, but I wouldn't listen to them. That's nursery versus 15 years of experience or 20 years of experience. It doesn't count. So yes, that's what the thing is. What will happen tonight? Can South Africa do something? Well, they can. Of course, I still think South Africa is a good team. It's a very good team. It has some very young players. Yes, they may not make runs. They may not get those hundreds and 50s and have those records by their predecessors. Though I think those records don't count. Amla and De Villiers were lucky enough to play for the 17-year period they played in, because there were a lot of times Amla and De Villiers did not contribute one smidgen to the team, but they survived for 17-18 years. So why can't we give this lot at least 6-7 years? The South African selectors have to be patient, and the so-called experts need to shed their own ego before just talking about, oh, the good old days, Amla and De Villiers and Smith and Steyn and Rabada and Mokel. That's absolute rubbish. That's just rubbish. I would still give the South African team a chance that yes, they can do the job. We saw what happened in the second innings when India was bowled out for 170. Why not give a 20-year-old Marco Jansen an opportunity that yes, maybe 10 years from now he'll be playing 50 matches, 200 wickets. Jack Callis was good, but as I said, the guy played for a better part of 18 years. And when you do that, you will always do well. So why this irrational talk about whether the team is good or not? It doesn't work that way. But then we are fueled by ego. We have this nostalgic element in our heads. It never goes away. And that's the most irritating part of this entire discussion. What will happen this afternoon? No one knows. You don't know. I don't know. Anything is possible this afternoon. So I would be patient with the South African team. I don't care who wins the toss and who bats first, because that is certainly irrelevant. But we do get carried away by such frivolous things like tosses and the ground is at a higher altitude. Well, it may be at a higher altitude, but the attitude of all the experts is at the lowest. And the aptitude, there is no aptitude of the current group of experts whose attitude and aptitude is at its lowest. So they can't talk about the altitude of the ground and how it will affect the batters and the way they play. You can't talk about altitude when you have no aptitude and your attitude is at its lowest. So they better not do anything, and they better stop running their mouths and just consider themselves lucky to be even part of the so-called commentary team. Because if I was in charge, none of them even have a renewal of contract. That's what I would do. I would make sure they never are contracted by any sports broadcast anywhere in the world. And that's what I would do. But I can't, but I can certainly influence them. So I only listen to them because I want to say that all the things they say are absolute, well, let's just say trash talk, gibberish, and no aptitude and absolutely no attitude. The attitude is at its lowest, so they have to talk trash to cover up for their lack of aptitude and knowledge of certain subjects. and you rather listen to a broken record or something else than listen to them. But I'll listen to them to see as to what not to do and then trash talk them in the next episode. But that's my team. This may not be the team they want, but whatever be the situation, whether Shami and Bumrah are fit or not after last week's bowling, but they had to bowl so much, I still think it's a 50-50 tournament. Contrary to what popular belief is that India can win it 2-0, I still think South Africa can do it. It could be 1-all, or rain could play a role, but still, this South African team, they are very good, and in the next 7-8 years, they will do things which will make us rethink our thoughts that this is a weak team. Whoever said this is a weak team will be eating their words in the next 5 to 6 years. And I think winning championships is not everything, but we associate everything with winning championship, and that's the worst of humanity which has to go away. Let's take a short break. So this ends episode number 464 on the 3rd of January 2022, as 2022 started off with the explosive and a dramatic start with everyone falling sick left, right and center, and humanity's inability to move on and stop panicking over minor situation. But that's the way human beings are. We are easily sucked into things, and those who are not, well, we know what we call them, but I won't be affected by those situations, and that's the way I roll. But stay tuned for the next episode.
For more awesome content, tune into the next episode of the Weekly Show.
And I will be back with episode number 465 on the 5th of January 2022 as the greatest talk show on the planet and its juggernaut rolls on. And then comes the most important question. What does the weekly show with Aditya tell other commentators? And while you wait for the next episode, put these legendary books in your must read books column. I repeat once again, put these legendary books in your must read books column. Till then, it's goodbye and good night.